Voice is the musical instrument that has the highest density of neuron connections to the brain, of course, because it's directly wired in. And so if you can learn to use that instrument, you have absolutely the best interface that we can design, to date. It's all there, and all the subtleties of the experience that you're having can come through the frequencies of your voice because you have spent your entire life learning how to intuitively modulate that apparatus. And so, as a designer, as someone who's trying to create out of base matter something that you can use for that same purpose, basically that's sort of my guide is, how extensive can the connections be between your brain and the sound making apparatus, and like how frictionless, how intuitive, etc. So that's the goal as a designer, and there are lots of, I feel like this isn't the right talk to go into the technicalities too much of like, keyboards and pressure sensors and things like that. I mean, maybe a little bit, like, nah, it's not that important. These are implementation details, as you would say. So the implementation details are you want to transduce the physicality that you have that's connected to your brain to the sound making things as best you can. And that's always that's the point to keep coming home to. I think I'll wrap up this little segment of the talk by saying that this is Bob Moog unfortunately developed a really fast-acting form of brain cancer, a glioblastoma, in 2004, and within 6 months he had passed away. But there was a point when he knew that all of that was happening, but he was still working at the factory, that he took me aside to sort of give me a last download. And what it was essentially that, the keyboard is, he was, Bob Moog really liked the keyboard. That's why Moog synthesizers have keyboards as opposed to like Buchla and other more esoteric so-called West Coast synthesis, if there are any synthesizer nerds in the audience. Anyway, there are a lot of people who think that keyboards are too square and too European, and they put your music in a box, and it's better to have like really esoteric interfaces that let you get outside of the box. And that's super valid. But the thing about the piano keyboard is that for a few hundred years, it was the most sensitive, the most highly connected apparatus that you could use to play polyphonic music. It was really, really dialed in. But as what Bob told me in his last little download was, at the end of the day, it's still just like levers and on-off switches and button pressing. And the real work to be done is how do we get beyond that to truly connect the player to the most expressive realms of sound that they can access. And he was like, there's a lot of good work to be done in that area that needs to be done. And I was like, okay, heard. I guess I'll get on that. And so I filed that away, and I spent about the next 10 years writing firmware for analog synthesizers that Moog was making, and I had a lot of fun doing that. There's a synthesizer called the Sub 37 or the Subsequent 37. That's my baby. I designed it. I designed the sound engine and the control panel and all the things about it, and I'm so proud of what it has gone out into the world and done, and all of the amazing music that people have made with it. There was this one moment that I want to share about that particular instrument that was like, this is sort of crystallizes for me what being a synthesizer designer and working at Moog and all of that stuff, like, this is what I'm going to remember, at the end of the day, is that synthesizers go through a burn-in process where you leave them all running for a couple days to make sure that nothing burns out before you ship them to their proud new owners. And so we had just finished the first production run of this new synthesizer that I had designed, and there was a whole rack full of them sitting on the production floor. It was late at night, the lights were out, and all I could see was these blinking LEDs on these racks of these brand new synthesizers that nobody in the world had yet. And I just sat there and took in like all of the musical potentiality, all of the songs that this rack full of instruments is going to go out into the world and make. And I was just, I'm tearing up a little bit now, just like remembering it. Like, that's what it's about. That is what, you know, as a tool maker, as a maker of tools for people to contact the source of creative expression, like, that's what it's all for. And when someone actually uses these tools to connect with, you know, their soul's resonance with the universe, and they bring out their own personal sound through that. Something that I had meant to talk about earlier and didn't get around to. I had some notes, and then I was like, if I read from my notes, I'm just going to be reading, and that'll be dumb. I'm not going to do that. But so, you know, it's going to be a little non-linear. I'll remember things. But the thing about synthesizers that really got me interested, and that's worth mentioning, is the subtlety and the infinite variability of what you can do with each little particle and parameter of the sound. You know, that's kind of cool in the abstract if you like complicated, neat-looking stuff, and that's, you know, I love that aesthetic. I get gratified by that, but really, it's about all of those options let you, the musician, get closer and closer to the sound that you hear in your head, in your mind's ear. And that perfect sound that's like coming through from the cosmos to you personally that nobody else can hear yet. If you have all of these little parameters to dial it in, you can really get close. It's like, it's not possible yet to get it one-to-one, but the subtlety and infinite variety of all of the little parameters that you have with synthesizers let you get as close as we can get right now to the perfect sounds that you hear when you're in the flow state and it's just coming through you. So that's a good setup for the next little part of my talk, which is what I guess my life's work is now that I'm announcing here for the first time. So I had a vision. This is another little piece of the talk. I'm putting all the pieces together here. I wanted to describe for you a dynamic that's maybe unique to me that I think is pretty cool, which is that the reason that I am so into Psytrance is because I discovered very early on, like at my first experience, that it was like the most potent active meditation tool that I had ever encountered. And when I'm in the trance and I'm in the dance and I'm like, the music is dancing me and I'm just following it along, then that's when my mind is the most pure and clear and present, and I'm just fully in the moment. And, you know, I have ADD, I can't do sitting meditation. I mean, I can, but it's like dancing for 8 hours and just going in, man, that does it. It really does it. And so in that state, that's the best place, the best circumstances for me to contemplate new musical instrument ideas and like thinking about, so like I'm listening to the sounds that are made by these amazing synthesizers and I'm in a trance state and I'm thinking, how do we make more amazing sound making devices so that the music that I hear is going to be even more amazing and better? And it's this beautiful cycle. And so that's, you know, that's where my best ideas come from, is like being deep in the trance state, one with the music, and then like contemplating the tools that make the music and how to make them better. And so at a certain point in that process, I had this realization, and when it hit me, it was like the earth shifted on its axis, and I had a head rush, and I had to just like hold onto the wall and be like, whoa, I guess this is my life's purpose. And then my immediate next thought was, but it's not technically possible within one lifetime, so maybe I just shouldn't even bother, and I should just do something else, because it's impossible. But that was 10 or 15 years ago, and technology is advancing, and you know, deep learning and, you know, machine learning algorithms are getting better and better. They're improving themselves. It's becoming exponential. We're approaching the singularity, maybe, who knows? But so maybe my crazy idea actually would be possible. And the short form of the idea is a line out for the musical imagination. It's just a one-to-one, plug your brain in, think of sounds, hit record, other people can hear them exactly the way you heard them in your head. And like that is the best musical instrument that I can think of. I mean, that's what every musician is trying to recapture and like weeping into the night because they can't actually get it. And so I had this vision of like, imagine a trance party where the DJ is simply sitting in silent meditation in a trance and you're hearing what's going on in their head. And they're just imagining every conceivable musical idea that they can put together and just sitting and doing it. They're in a trance and then you get to be in their trance. Like, that would be hot, right? So that's my vision. That's what I want to see in the world. And so I guess I'm asking all of you, if any of you are like shit hot computation people or neurology people, or, you know, if you're good at scanning brains and interpreting them, like, this is going to need a team of people to figure out how to decode the thing that's going on in our head to where we can translate it to a thing that you can press record on. But, you know, I used to think it was not possible in this lifetime, but now, like, technology is amazing and human potential is amazing, and there's a lot of us on this planet that might think this was a pretty cool idea. So this is the call to action part of my speech is like, hey, if you think this is cool and you think you can help, I guess this is what I'm doing with my life now, so let's make it happen. Yeah, there's another piece to this, which is that like my time at Moog Music is coming to an end like next month, and so it's time for a new chapter, and I guess this is it, and this is me, you know, rallying such troops as there are to do the next big thing in my life. You know, I'll probably also make some parties and make some music. I've been getting more into that. Like, I spent 10 years making tools for other musicians, and just kind of all my only creative output was like synthesizer demos. Like, hey, we made a new thing. Here are the sounds it makes. It's pretty cool. But now I'm actually getting into creatively expressing myself, and it's wonderful, and it's like, it's about time, and I feel like I've sort of arrived at that level. So I'll be doing that, but also trying to create the line out for the mind's ear. I don't know how we're doing on time. I feel like maybe I rushed this and we're like not all the way through my time slot. That probably doesn't matter. But I was asked to make this interactive, and I feel like that was, I've just given you the download, so I'm happy to take questions about anything that I do in my life or that I've talked about if anybody has any questions or ideas. Yes, hold on. Maybe I'm rushing things. I don't know what's going on. We're winging it. Oh, we have an audience participation mic. Even better. Awesome. Okay, we're going to sort this out, figure it out, and, you know, then we'll just, like, popcorn the questions. I don't know, we'll pass the mic around. It's family style. Yeah.
So, we only have one mic. Haha. So, you're going to have to...
Literally just this one mic?
Yeah.
Okay, I can project again. That's fine.
Or they can come up with the questions.
Or you can come up with your questions.
Yeah, it's gonna be like as cool.
Okay, maybe I think it's approach the stage and I'll hand you the mic, and that's how that's gonna work. If that's okay, if that's not too like, I don't know. Okay, oh, we got one right here.
So if you're leaving Moog, is there an opening there?
Honest answer, probably yes, depending on your skill set and your, like, if you're the right person for it. It's a growing company, and they do need people. Like, so yes, Moog Music is hiring probably, so now you know. Okay, I'm just gonna, yep.
Thanks. So I'm wondering if you've looked into the frequencies most commonly used in psytrance music, because I noticed when I've been at Boom, this time in 2018, I was quite intrigued by the sense of people being in a more meditative, you know, relaxed frequency state, and so I'm curious about any information in that vein, and if there are particular frequencies that are being used in psytrance which are having a certain impact on brain waves or other embodied things.
Yeah, the short answer is that the long short answer is that I haven't looked into the very specific, like, 141.2 hertz does this and that. I'm not 100% convinced. It's like I'm on the fence how important that is and how, or to what extent we shouldn't get hung up on numbers. Because one of the things about, frequencies are absolute kind of relative to time, which is relative. And what I think that people are doing in Psytrance is neurofeedback, biofeedback. What they're doing is they are tuning into what makes them feel the thing that they're trying to feel. And again, this goes back to how synthesizers have so many parameters that you can really dial in the minutia of the sound that you're going for. So it's a feedback process where you find out what makes you feel the state that you're trying to embody, and you just turn that up, whatever that means in terms of the synthesis and the frequencies. You dial it in until, you feel it. When it hits right, you feel it. And that's more important than any number that you can use a measuring apparatus. It's about the human nervous system, and that's the ultimate truth that you're going for. And so the thing about Psytrance is that it's this collective neurofeedback project where we've been researching how to feel this amazing feeling, and producers are getting better and better at dialing it in. And there are things like, I know producers that will adjust the release time of their compressor to match the key that the bass line is in, because it's pumping at a certain frequency relative to the musical pitch. And if you want if you want your compressor to be perfectly enveloped, then you actually have to tune it to the key that you're playing in. Most people don't take it to that extreme, but like Psytrance producers are the nerdiest, most dialed in sonic manipulators that I've ever met, which is another reason that I love them, and that's why it's my shit. So yeah, it's a biofeedback process rather than just numerical frequencies. At the same time, those biofeedback processes may converge on some objective numbers that would be cool to know, but I don't actually know them at this time. That was a long answer.
I'm walking there. Yeah, you were talking about that you want to probably work with somebody who has an interface, and I don't know if you know these people, but on the Saturday there was this talk about techno shamanism with Francisco M. Teixeira, Luis Anjos, and Gil Einhorn, who are developing exactly this. They have like this kind of EEG headpiece, which lets you create art pieces directly from your brainwaves. And they are exactly doing that kind of stuff. Maybe you should get in touch with them. The organization will know, probably.
Funnily enough, I actually collaborated with them already on a piece using that equipment. There was a dancer in a cube wearing the apparatus, and I was accompanying the dance on modular synthesizer. So we've all met and hung out, and we just haven't talked shop yet, but that's totally going to happen. All the synchronicities, man, this whole trip that I've been on, just everything has been in perfect flow, perfect alignment. I'm meeting all the right people, and this is how I knew it was going to happen. I was like, I'm going to clear my calendar because I'm going to meet the most amazing people at Boom, and they're going to put it all together, and it's happening.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's a beautiful idea that a DJ can just think up the music and it's there, but I'm wondering, is the human mind not too fickle? In other words, humans cannot really decide on what they're thinking, So I imagine that, how can you get like systematized, yeah.
That's a super good question, and I've thought about this, not surprisingly, and the answer that I've come up with is that this will probably be the hardest to play musical instrument ever devised. You'll have to learn just like, a baby learning to use its own voice. It's going to be that level of training. But more than that, I think the only people who are really going to be able to do this, it's going to require like shamanic levels of meditation training, because you truly will have to sit with an empty mind in the presence of the infinite. And that's the only way that the music is going to come through clearly. So it's going to be really difficult, but a few people, perhaps an order of Psytrance monks that are just like deeply devoted to this meditative practice. That's what it's going to have to be. That's the only way it's going to work. Like, you will have to be in samadhi in order for the music to come through clearly. And otherwise it's going to be distorted, it's going to jump around the same way that your attention jumps around. It's going to do that, and it won't be super fun to listen to. It'll be the best to listen to when you're the deepest in trance.
I have a follow-up question to this. So one thing is to take the music directly out of the head, but the other is to use the brain just like as the interface. So you could do think of an apple and then scan the waves, and apple is a C. And think of a dog, that's going to be a D. So did you experiment with that? And if yes, does it work?
I have a good analogy for that. There are people experimenting with that right now, and I don't want to misrepresent the work that my colleagues here at the festival are doing, but most brainwave scanning right now is looking at the electrical impulses that you can see through the skin of the neuronal activity. And the analogy that I use is it's like placing a water glass up against a wall and there's a crowded party on the inside and everybody's rocking and bopping and there's music playing and everybody's talking at once, and you're trying to pick out a certain conversation or you're trying to make sense of it through this muffled totality of everything bouncing around. And that's kind of what we have to work with now. Most of the commercially available interfaces, that's what you get. And we're getting really good at signal processing. DSP actually lets us reconstruct a lot of amazing stuff. And probably some DSP engineers could do my exact metaphor of you're like listening through a stethoscope on the wall and there's a crowded party. There's probably DSP engineers that could reconstruct accurately all the conversations that are going on in that room. But it's a hard problem. It's a huge thing to do. And so mostly what we have now is things where if you calm your body's state, then the overall noise activity, the party gets quieter and people are talking less loud in the party. And so you can measure that and you're like, okay, the overall level of noise at the party is quieter now. And you can attach that as a controller to something. You can use MIDI or voltages or, basically, yeah. So like you still your whole body and then that's a controller, or you activate your whole body and then, the parameter that you're controlling goes up and down. But it's at a very gross level of like total system activity as opposed to thinking of an apple and being able to say, aha, an apple is what is being thought of right now. Now I have heard, and this is the part of the reason that I'm bringing this talk out, is that lately I have heard things that are like what I was just saying, like you imagine something and there's computer decoding technology that is able to kind of with some degree of accuracy get like the thing you're imagining or the type or the broad category of thing you're imagining, which is like total alien sci-fi nonsense, but it's happening, I think. So I hope it's happening. I hope it's not all just hot air because my whole concept depends on that shit being real. So we'll see. But yeah, where we're at right now is like you're listening to a party through a wall and you can just get the broadest sense of what's going on. And what we need is like really fine resolution of exactly what's going on at the, the consciousness interface level as opposed to just the like broad neuronal activity. Yep. I have a lot of time apparently. I've been informed that I have almost an hour still, so we can just keep rapping. It's great.
Hey, my question is quite similar. What I find really enjoyable about making and playing music is the kind of physical and tactile nature of interacting with an instrument. And I think that's why a lot of people buy like MIDI controllers and synthesizers over just like programming and VST. So I was wondering if you kind of figured how you could incorporate that and maybe make like a hybrid approach of, so it's not just coming from your brain, you still have like the movement and the tactile interaction, and have you thought about how you might be able to do that?
That's a super awesome question because all of my real world work so far has been at the tactile, like physical, ordinary MIDI controller-y kind of level of things. And this pie in the sky moonshot idea, like I hadn't really connected those two. So super appreciate you asking. I will say, you know, going back to what I said about this being like the most difficult to play instrument conceivable, it would help a lot with that if it had a physicality and instrumentality that we've spent our whole lives learning how to do that stuff already. And it's fun. So, yeah, if there was some way, and this, back to what I think you were saying about, like, what can we do with the controls we have now, even the kind of simple brainwave activity stuff that I know definitely works, there could be a hybrid approach where you have physical controls, you've got pressure, you've got all the sensitivities that you would use to impart expressive performance on a regular musical instrument, plus also the ability to, you know, impart something with your brainwaves. Like, I've definitely had moments where I thought that's what was going on. Might have just been real high, but it definitely felt like there was some mental influence on the sound. It would be so cool to erase and blur that boundary a little bit more to where it was like, yeah, for sure, it is actually happening. Maybe not under totally precise control, but it's in there. Your brain's in there doing the stuff. But you're right, with the instrumentality that we have the ability to be virtuosic with already. Anybody? Sure. Yeah, we might need to, like, come closer if you have a question or whatever. Yeah.
So you mentioned that Dr. Robert Moog was someone who studied physics at Cornell and then had also had a really clear and innate understanding of music. And he was able to combine those to create the synthesizers, and he passed that on to you, where you have a really innate understanding of the music along with the science behind it. So as a designer, how do you balance the, you know, talking shop, the science and the understanding and the details behind what you're making with the overall strategy and the concept of what you're making?
That's an awesome question, and I definitely don't always get it right. My tendency as a nerdy designer person is to put too many cool features into a thing because I think they're cool and amazing and interesting. And, you know, if that comes at the expense of a musician's ability to wrap their head around it and actually be creatively expressive on it, then I failed as a designer by putting too many whiz-bang neat things in there that aren't actually, that get in the way of the process of actually making music on the thing. So the source of truth for doing that process correctly, and that was another thing that Bob Moog was super good at, was working, you know, he listened, he was a tool maker. You know, he was very humble. He was like, I make tools for people to do creative expression. So you go to them and you ask them what's working and you ask them, you know, what do you wish you could do? What do you need? And, you know, where are the friction points in what you're doing now? And that's what guides, you know, we can think of all the cool things, but the right cool things are the ones that answer those questions of the performer, of the musician. You know, what do I need? What do I wish I could do better? You know, how do I want it to be? And so you listen to the performer to make the tools that they wish that they had, rather than the tools you wish that they wanted. Next question.
Thank you. I'm just got here and don't exactly know what it's all about, but I really got inspired of asking you a question because in 2014 I really discovered Psytrance for myself, and I was always keeping attention of expressing the music like it is with my body through dancing, and it got to a level where it changed, where in my experience it changed. So not I was doing what the music is doing, the music was doing what I was doing. And I was thinking, is that really true? And I had to try it, and so I had a break to get a drink within the music, and it stopped, and it really badly stopped, and I thought, oh my god, and everyone was blaming the DJ for it, and I was thinking, oh my god, and the thing was, out of nowhere I was really intrigued by that, because how am I gonna perform music just out of nowhere? And it was really hard to keep it up, and I was thinking it might be interesting for you to hear about this.
You have no idea how interesting, because I have been there. I have had the experience you're describing myself. Yeah, a number of times. Yeah, I've absolutely been in that space where, like, I was so deep in the trance that I was then absolutely certain that, like, I was manifesting the sounds that I was hearing, that I was dancing to, and all of, like, I've been there. Well, I have a really weird theory for that, if you like weird theories. Okay, so... Yeah, it's like at the start of my talk, I mentioned something about how, like, as a mode of pure consciousness, we exist at the intersection of the entire multiverse, and we're tuning it in like a radio receiver. And so what that means is that we have a consensus reality that we all share, and that's necessary because it's cool to meet people and do stuff. But there's also this non-consensus reality that's the stuff that our personal consciousness is tuning in from the cosmos, and that can be really fucking weird. and it can be very personal because, I mean, you're surfing the frequency waves and you're dialing the stuff in, and when you are at a high enough state of presence, that stuff becomes 100% actual, as real as consensus reality is, and you are existing in a liminal state in between consensus reality and the infinite potentiality of the cosmos, because our brains do that. The title of my talk is "Reality Isn't a Simulation; It's Synthesized." Hey, brought that one back. And what I'm talking about is that we are synthesizing the reality we experience from the infinite potentiality of all things at all times. Like, that's what we do. And mostly it stays pretty normal for most people because that's useful to us. But, what we call schizophrenia and what we call, all of these altered states is just personally tuning in to a non-consensus reality. But that shit's real. It's all... Every potentiality is real. All at once, simultaneously, that there is a hologram of every potentiality that could ever be conceived of, and we exist within that hologram, and we tune stuff in from it. And that's the source of inspiration. It's like, literally anything is possible, you dial it in, that's real, you can see that reality, and then as a creative being, you can bring it back into the consensus reality, be like, look what I found out in the cosmos, check this out, it's awesome, right? So I think when we're really, really tuned into the trance, you are existing in a liminal state where you are creating the music, you're doing the thing that I'm describing, making a machine to share, but like, you're doing that personally. You've had the experience of being, a deep, a samadhi trance DJ, like I'm describing. You've been that person, and then you were like, whoa, what's happening? And then the music stopped. Yeah, so that's a super weird state. You have to really practice to get there. But if you're really deep in the trance, you can get there, and it's amazing. And I'm so cool that you have shared that. Like, I'm glad that it isn't just me. Wow. Wow, best questions ever. Next.
Thanks. And apologies in advance if my question is going to be a bit long-winded, but I hear we have plenty of time. So I want to go back to like your ultimate idea and like the line of work that you've been doing that led up to this, right? Because you've been working on these synthesizers to basically allow musicians to be as detailed as possible, right, about the things that they have in their mind and the music that they actually can produce, and then your ultimate idea is like an extension of this, right? You like directly submit your brainwaves. So I think you might, with this idea, you might be somehow putting the musician on a pedestal a little bit that I have a critical note with, maybe, because I think a lot of good music has also come from like accidents, for example. Like, there's a lot of music with musicians, they wanted to do something, they didn't have money, they used like substandard equipment, but it actually ended up sounding great or something. And there's also the fact of like multiple people working together on something, right? Like, there's often like a producer in between there. So there's a musician who is making something that's maybe a little bit crazy, and there's like a filter in between, right? Someone who goes like, okay, well, this might be a good one, maybe leave this one out. It's the same with movies, right? Like, the director's cut isn't always better, right? Because if you just let the crazy mind at the source of it all have free reign, it might end up a bit out there sometimes. So I'm kind of wondering how you see this working with your ultimate idea, right? Because you're describing a space where there's like one person in a trance submitting their thoughts of music directly to the crowd. So how could you, have you thought about this? Like, how could you put the group effort in there? Like, could you have someone transmit their music to a middleman who then picks like, oh yeah, this is kind of good. Oh no, this is kind of crap. Yeah. So to put the group effort back in there.
Again, best questions ever. Amazing. So yesterday I was just like hanging out by the dance temple and I saw someone wearing a Sangoma Records t-shirt and I was like, yay, shout out to Sangoma, my favorite label. And it turns out I was talking to the Hierophants who are going to be playing tomorrow or something. And we just like started nerding out about synthesizers and psytrance, and then we went for a swim at the lake and just hung out, and it was amazing. And in the course of that conversation, we talked about, because they're a trio, and they talked to me about how their favorite thing about creating music together was the togetherness, the fact that together they could create something that was cooler than any one of them could imagine by themselves. And it was like, you know, they were building, they were combining each other's strengths. So yes, that is super duper important. And so I've got a practical answer, and then I've got a cosmic ridiculous answer, and I'll give you both of them. The practical answer is that I think that this whole performance mode thing where you're like, you know, seated in a trance, blah, 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 you know, that's sort of the pinnacle and the apotheosis, and it's also a very specific experience that's like, you know, it's like a live act versus a DJ set. That's the live act. The DJ set version, or the producer version, is using this tool just to think of one cool sound, and then to your point, you know, this is going to be hard to do, so you might get something that's not what you had in mind. It'll be something glitchy. It'll be like you'll be distracted by something, and that distraction will come through sonically, and you'll be like, what was that? But if you're recording it, then that's a little piece that you can use in a regular digital audio workstation and put it together. It's just like making a cool synthesizer sound. You're just using this thing as a new source of samples that you can then cut up and produce like a normal person and share with your friends. You know, I feel like that's a much, much more practical application than the live set version, which will require years of intensive dedication, etc., if it ever happens at all. But the version where you think of a cool sound and something happens, maybe it's what you intended, maybe it isn't, but it's cool sounding and you put it in a piece of music, that feels much more achievable. Okay, that was the practical answer. Now the cosmic ridiculous answer is, I also, you know, another of my callings that I have felt, something that I've experienced personally is when I am just a mote of consciousness, I can go up and down in like levels of complexity of organization, and like I can go down and experience what it's like to be a molecule, and like every molecule is actually conscious and is having an experience just like I am. That's interesting. And also, if you zoom out, you know, then the entire cosmos is like a speck of dust within a larger system that, you know, exists at a higher level of organization. And where I'm going with all of that is that it is really interesting to experience what it is like to be a collective consciousness. Like all of these little, I mean, we are essentially a collective consciousness. Even, you know, the basic psychology as we understand it now is, you know, there's like group theory, family systems, there's all kinds of conscious entities that make up a self. And we coordinate them in order to act and feel like we have an identity, and sometimes it falls apart and we get schizophrenic and we don't have an identity, and all of these little selves are running around uncoordinated. So we really are already a collective consciousness at an individual level, and I think it would be super neat and useful for the species as a whole and our long-term survival if we could figure out how to level up and be a collective consciousness with each other. And maybe there's a technological solution to that could be explored, to where, you know, there's some controllable, repeatable, like an apparatus, if you will, that people can share that will let them link up and experience a collective consciousness together. And if that happens, then you can have a group jam session in this space.
So I wanted to come back a little bit to the topic on the interface connection between the brain and music that you were exploring before. And I had a couple of reflections. I think, first of all, everything is like, everything could be seen as programming language. And at the same time, everything is translating, right? It's translating inputs into something else, right? And I was thinking that probably the biggest challenge is that trying to reverse engineer the brain to interpret how to teach the brain how to make music. That's like complete impossible task, in my opinion. So in every big challenge that every astronomer, philosopher, all the inventors of technology in history, they never try to reach the topic in such a frontal way. They always try to think out of the box and think of hacks of how to translate something that might be not related at all, that actually has an expression effect that makes the trick. So, especially music, synthesizing, MIDI control, DMX, all protocols are just like basic, like CV voltage. Everything is just a hack of math to make music, right? So, I don't think there is any point in analyzing beta waves and trying to find like some magic way of thinking of an apple and that apple translates into whatever. I think the point will be to explore what could be the real hack of maybe using some existing technology, super basic, like abacus to math, for example. Like, for example, like the lying machine, or like some stuff like that, where like you are starting from very, very basic building blocks of just not thinking about music, of translating C, D, whatever, just thinking about a way of creating a translation. And that translation could be useful for music, could be useful for fucking everything. But trying to reverse engineer, like, oh, let's analyze what's going on in the crazy mind and try to like adjust this frequency, or maybe in this frequency there is this bump of voltage. I think it's crazy. I mean, good luck, but it's crazy. So I invite everybody to reflect on and think of ways that, like, if somebody calculated the distance between the sun and the earth by putting a pole in a place and going to 1,000 kilometers or whatever and putting another pole, that's crazy if you think about it. And they only had to do like basic math, existing already technology. No need to do like wait for AI or whatever algorithm bullshit that brings you the solution, like, oh, there it is. No need to, like, we don't need technology. We just need to think out of the box like they did to discover one of the greatest things, like, fuck, we are just a stone going around in the universe.
Amazing. Thank you. You have penetrated to the very essence of the situation. Because yes, what I've described as the frontal approach, that is like the hard problem of consciousness, the hard problem of AI, and a lot of really smart people, like, I don't know if any of you know Douglas Hofstadter. Shout out to Douglas R. Hofstadter, amazing thinker. He's basically considered that possibility and discarded it. Like, nope, can't be done, never, don't even try. So, you really hit the nail on the head with that, and I think what you said about the hacks, it's absolutely like, if this is ever going to happen, it's probably going to be through hacks like that, because all you need is some way to wiggle reality with your neurons at all, and neuroplasticity will probably take care of the rest. So you just figure out how it works, and then you work it, and it can be a hack. So, wow, you've already helped the project. Thank you.
A couple of days ago, or a week ago, or something like that, I came to know about DALL-E 2. I don't know. Yeah, you know that.
The art generator?
Exactly, the art generator. Like you give them, like, say, you type in just words like monkey riding a horse in space, drawn in Picasso style. You know, and it gives you all that stuff, and it was like, what the fuck, you know? I said, like, this is magic, you know? And if AI is already so far with images, I mean, images might be easier than sounds probably, but who knows? I mean, like these open AI guys, they are crazy. If you approach them, I don't know what can happen, you know? Like, that might be already the thing, you know? Like, let the AI decipher what's going on. Make sense out of all the noise in your head from the EEG and have it really easily dialed down to something concrete, you know?
Awesome. So my reply to that is my next stop after Boom is Burning Man. And there's a lot of nerdy Google people that hang out at the playa. And if I can corner some of them and get them hype about this, then like maybe we can get some motion.
Nice. Thanks. I'm going to continue on the two previous comments. I just happen to be the guy who spent last 10 years building AI methods for decoding the brain stuff. I have no idea how to make music. Hello. Hacks. Here are 3 hacks. So with existing technology, the guys are absolutely correct. You can decipher them, like without drilling the holes in the skull, you can do that. What you can do is you can create an AI model that generates the music and modulate it using the brain signals, for example. That'd be one hack. Another hack might be, well, your body has an interesting interface which amplifies all your brain waves, which is your muscles. So decoding the muscle signals, and you can control this system perfectly, and it has a great signal-to-noise ratio, so you can decode a lot more stuff than from the brain. But hey, surprise, surprise, it comes from the nervous system. Oh yeah, and here's another one. And my question would be, which one would you maybe prefer? So there's with the EEG, you can decode the reward signal, and you can build your neurofeedback system in a way that maximizes this reward. And this, like the funky part of the nerdy talk, would be, how do you think it will work, and could there be any problems if you have a person who just maximizes their own reward by doing the music?
Have you ever read Ringworld? Okay, Ringworld is a really cool science fiction novel, and in it, it hypothesizes this drug of the future that is just a thing that stimulates the pleasure center, and that's all it does. And it's super problematic and addicting, and you know, there's these like time locks that are hard to defeat because otherwise you'll just do it forever. So yeah, if it got like that, I could see that being a problem. You know, this is, you know, dystopian sci-fi has predicted everything. This one was in there. I have actually, at a nerdy modular synthesizer conference a few years ago, someone had built a machine that it was just a general, like it played general MIDI notes on some general instruments, and it had a slightly algorithmically shaped sort of style chooser. And then your EEG was wired up to how much you were enjoying its output. And so it would just like modulate the keys and the sounds and the instrument. It was very crude, but it was basically like, oh, do you like this? I'll go more in that direction. You know, oh, you don't like that as much. I'll try something random and see if you like it more. And then it you know, feedback. And so eventually you would get a piece of music that was, you know, it was semi-automatic. It was, you know, just an algorithmically generated process. But it was shaped by how much you were enjoying the results of that process iteratively. So that was pretty neat. I feel like there's another part of your question or statement that I haven't gotten to, but that's where we're at in this. So I hope. Okay. Yep. Next. Oh wait. You has asked a couple questions, I think, or let's get someone who hasn't.
Thanks, man. Really interesting talk. I want to come back to the hacks AI part of the discussion. So actually, the OpenAI stuff works really well because it's a machine translation problem, right? To translate text into images, and their thing works because they have an insane amount of data, which is scraped massively from the internet, of pairings between images and text, and that's how they train their AI model, right? So if you want to do the same thing, preferably from a signal source, like a space of your body, like signals that are rich enough, like the body and your mind, and to the music, you would need like to collect a really great amount of data yourself on how do you think this body contraction maps to this sound or this like particular, this could be a hack idea. So, and it would be a very interesting meditative process to actually collect this data. So, what do you think about this?
That's an amazing hack idea. And the thing about images and words is that we have spent thousands of years creating those tables of correlations. So there is this incredibly massive corpus to work from that's already worked out. But in the case that you're describing, that we're describing here, there's not already you don't have two sets of data with mappings already established. You've got the musical, you would really be doing a lot of original, as you said, you need to gather this data and then figure it out what it meant. I think this one place to start might be the kind of trance dancer that can get so into it that they are one with the music, and then they think they might be creating, like those are maybe the electrical impulses and the physiological responses that you would want to record, and then try to, you could actually correlate it. You have a time-linked correlation between that and the music itself, and maybe that's where you start. Yeah, cool. Anyone else? That was amazing. Okay, yes. Yes, come to the stage, come to the mic. Hi.
Hi, thank you so much. Amazing talk. You are very brave for sharing your idea and your dream. Thank you for that. Thank you everyone here. My name is Joanna. I also work in computational biology and with AI and stuff. And it will be possible to get your contact at Google. That's no problem at all. I think the big question here is, how do you show that you are transmitting music that is coming from the soul or the consciousness, and it's not the translation process that you are showing in the music. So for the origin of a complex thing, we never know how the machine is going to do that translation, right? But the whole process of doing that will teach us a lot of things, and there are many people working on similar stuff. You know that as well. So I think this is a collective, so let's connect, and I think it's a good thing, yeah.
Thank you. That was my fondest hope in giving this talk, was to make those connections. I am Sensory Somatic on Instagram, if anybody wants to take that down, or I don't know if this talk is being recorded or not. I guess I'm on things other than, I'm on Facebook, I have a phone number. What else have we got here? Yeah, I'm not. Those are kind of the main things that I'm doing at the moment. Is So, like sensory, SENSORY, somatic, SOMATIC, all one word. Sensory somatic, which is also, it's like similar to my DJ name, which is Sensoma, which is actually kind of a contraction of sensory somatic. I'm not sure which one came first. It's also my name backwards. Blah blah blah. But so that's Sensory Somatic on Instagram, Amos Gaynes on Facebook. Someone is calling me. I hope it's not important. It's people adding me on Instagram. Amazing. All right. It's a private account. I'll approve you all as soon as we're done. Thank you. This is amazing. Yes, and if you're someone who thinks that this is worth talking about at a technical level in the future, awesome. Let's do it. I'm so stoked. I don't think we're out of time yet. Are we? No? All right, let's keep rocking. Anyone else? Anything else? Okay, great.
Yeah, I have a question relating to the physical interface. We talked about the body, our muscles. So I have the feeling that we are searching the concept of gamification. So for me as a percussionist, it's okay, I have drumsticks and I hit stuff with it. Yeah, it's just simple as that. And the problem is, okay, how can we make a social environment that is pleased for the others to hear this or to share this? It doesn't have to be percussion. I mean, you have these days those handy interfaces you can connect to a smartphone or whatever you want, you name it. And how can we make a social environment, a game out of it?
That's a really awesome suggestion. Gamification is making all kinds of hard problems fun to work through. That's the whole point. I mean, life is a game, and let's make it fun. And I think I would connect what you just said to this other idea that was brought up of like, how do we create the corpus of raw information that these modern machine learning, you know, the machine learning only works really well if you have like unfathomable amounts of data to create correlations from. So the gamification process could make it really fun to gather that data by, like, you know, it could be like Dance Revolution. You've got Trance Revolution, where you're getting into the vibe and it's recording, like I said, a time synchronized. You've got the track, you've got all the muscle impulses, you're doing the thing, and then, you know, you get points and congratulations and like gold coins shower from the sky. And meanwhile, petabytes of data are going into a cloud somewhere, and then the machine learning processes have something to chew on. That sounds great. Yes. Do you have a follow-up?
Yeah. I mean, in the sense of percussion, we already have this data. We have the notes, and we have already algorithms to decode the music to notes again. So in this point, I think we already have the data. We just have to build the environment, the social environment for the gamification, isn't it?
Yeah, I think we may now be diverging into two different projects. One being something really fun that we could do, leveraging the physical instrumentality that like you are already expert at as a percussionist, and then like that has a purpose and a reality to you as an expressive musician that doesn't even necessarily require a big machine learning algorithm in the sky to create new kinds of music. Like I think that you could make something really cool with that that doesn't, you know, it's doing something that is translating your emotions into cool new sounds that would open up a whole world of expressive musical possibilities. It's like almost a different musical instrument, one that's not based so much on thought, but based on, you know, the thought as it's connected to the instrument that you're playing now. This goes back to someone earlier asked a question, what about a hybrid instrument, where it's like it's got physical stuff that you do and it's got this neural connection somehow. I think you're maybe describing a version of that. And yeah, that sounds also near term, much more achievable, and super fun. Okay.
Hey, so thanks for the talk. Amazing. I really hope that this can happen. You know, when there's an intention, things move forward. Exactly. Exactly. So I wanted to share an idea that a friend of mine has been sharing with me like 2 years ago maybe, and I haven't done any research on whether this exists or not, so it's much more down to the earth than Neuralink ideas, but it was basically a VR synthesizer, yeah? So you would have a VR headset, and I guess most of you who have tried a VR headset are amazed by this tangible, almost tangible virtual world that you have around you, and just imagine that you have a synthesizer interface inside of a VR world that you could be tuning and creating music with. So this would, I think, make it much more approachable, so to people who get lost in the interface of the software on a 2D screen, right? And the second advantage could be that other people could actually watch you making the music in the same space, because it is a virtual space, yeah? So I don't know if something like this already exists. I think that this is totally possible to create, and yeah, what is your take on this?
Yeah, no, I mean, a team could get started on that tomorrow and have a, you know, minimum viable prototype, you know, in a couple months, and it would be super fun and amazing. And I feel like where that's really going is that using that VR space to figure out what are the modes of interaction and perception that make the most sense in that space. Because what I've seen all right, there's like one, I wish I could name check it. There's somebody made a game that was like, it was in VR, and the game was just about finding sounds and like playing with them. in, you know, and you would just like, you were exploring this virtual space and you'd get close, it was like spatialized, and there'd be an interesting sound, and you'd go over to it and you could like, it would change as you got close to it, you know, so it wasn't so much about like making music as just like playing in a sonic playground. But what I have seen done that I think is not the way to do it is like you have a volumetric version of a physical synthesizer with volumetric knobs and you use your big dumb grabber hand to try to turn them. Like, that's not what VR is for. That's dumb. Don't do that. But find what really does make sense, that's intuitive, that you are just like swimming and playing and it's all, you know, like that is going to be super fun to explore, and that could absolutely be a new playable musical instrument that doesn't require like any nonsensical crazy brain hacks. And yes, like that, basically that's an art project. That's an art and aesthetic exploration of a 21st century technology that we haven't had before, and I'm really excited about it. Great suggestion. This is weird, like, you know, it's like collaborating musically. Like, all of us together are so much more amazing than any individual one of us. And yeah, yay us. Anyone else want to approach the mic? Ooh, okay, yes, you were waiting.
So the idea of using muscles as an amplification of the brainwaves kind of sounds like just playing a regular instrument. And so I was thinking about, so what is different about this idea? And what I thought in the beginning, it's the ability to think up music is always better than the ability to play it. And that's what the musicians struggle with. Their ability to play the music is way worse, and they're never satisfied with the difference between what they played and what they actually had in their head. So as long as taking the music out of their head, needing some kind of ability and training and stuff like that, it just sounds like a complicated instrument. And right now you said that it's supposed to be intuitive. So again, is there anything more intuitive than having a button that if you press it makes a sound, and if you press it harder it's louder?
No, that's why physical instruments have, you know, for the last 100,000 years since physical instruments have existed, they've already been optimized for the physical reality in which we exist. So yes, from a certain perspective, it is like reinventing what we already have, only making it more complicated. But I do have an answer to maybe justify it a little bit, which is way earlier in my talk, I used the analogy of the voice, which the voice has, you know, it's fully connected to the nervous system, you know, in all of its like millions of little pathways. And any physical instrument, it is easier to use because you have fewer connections and fewer choices, but it, you know, it is limited in its expressiveness by like the density of information pathways between that instrument and yourself. And a really sensitive musical instrument, which is like, you know, any acoustic instrument, that density is pretty high because everywhere that you touch it with your skin that's full of nerves, then you have like a very high density connection to it. You can feel the vibrations, you know. So to your point, is that good enough already? Do we already have that? And I'm just describing making an acoustic instrument with like a bunch of techno magic in the middle? Maybe, but one thing about instrument design, and this is what I do as an instrument designer, it's like, if I just thought about how cool musical instruments are as they now exist, you know, and gave up and went home, and I was like, well, everything's already perfect, there's nothing more to be done. Like, well, that wouldn't be fun. Like, what about a variation on a theme that lets you do something aesthetically or sonically or artistically different? That's valid. You know, so by creating a new way to do the same thing, it gives artists more choices and more cool stuff for us to all listen to, hopefully. Okay, oh, yep. This corner. Share amongst yourselves.
So, I had an idea a few years ago, and I don't know if it exists, but I'm a singer, I'm a songwriter, and I know how to play the guitar a little bit and the keyboard, but I always wanted to play also the cello and the violin and so many instruments, but not using a synthesizer where I have to, like, I thought about an instrument that I can just sing into it whatever I want that instrument to do, but at the same time, you know, like to sing the melody that I imagined that the cello would do here. Is that That's a thing. That's a thing. It's work. There is like it exists. I need it.
Yep, that is a thing already. There are a few people working on it. The first one that comes to mind, there's an app called Imatone. It's out there in the world for probably iOS and probably Android. And Imatone it's exactly that. It's a sensitive, it listens to your voice and it encodes all that as expressive MIDI signals that the same. It's like, I mean, there's latency, but it's like, milliseconds. It's low enough that you can use it live, and so you sing into it, and a cello comes out, and you can impart, by how you modulate your voice, you can impart expressive dynamics to the cello sound. It's not perfect. You don't have like every parameter available to you, but you've got enough parameters that you can make it really sing. You can make it sing, and so that's a thing. And there's a few different people working on it. So for sure that's out there, and I can't wait for you to make music with it. Did you have a question? Yeah, one more. Okay, and then you next.
Yeah, I just want to mention another thing I just saw in the streets. Some guy was playing something called the Soma pipe. Soma pipe. It's an analog synthesizer that's controlled with the voice, and it's super cool. So. Yeah, it makes different kinds of sound. So it's not like instruments, but it's more like a synth, and you can control it with your voice and do all kind of chanting. It's a synthesizer. You can also use it with MIDI signals, but you can also control it with your voice. Yeah, which is really cool. So.
Oh, and there's actually, I forget the name of it now, which is really unfortunate, but there's a piece of analog technology that lets you turn your voice into control voltage signals, and so I've used that to sing through my modular synth, and that's super neat because you can get analog oscillators, tuned in and following your voice closely enough. It's a little glitchy, but you can really make it sing. So that's out there as well. I was going to pull out my phone and I have a clip of that, and I'll hold the phone up to the mic and you can hear it. But just yes, you can. There's ways to do that in the analog voltage control world as well as the digital world. Okay, and you had a question.
I have been making music for a couple of years now, mostly electronic music. And since 3 years, I have started to make psychedelic music. I tried after playing hardcore drum and bass for more than 8 years. And whenever I make psychedelic music, I feel really disconnected, and I can't objectively listen to my own music just because it's psychedelic. And I have a really hard time listening to the magic that psychedelic music gives you when I make it myself. Do you have anything to say or comment about that?
That's a really interesting one. I mean, I think I think you're touching on a problem that is central to the creative arts generally, which is how do you do the thing and also distance yourself from it objectively enough to, appreciate in context the thing that you're doing. It's very hard to do both of those things at the same time. The only real answer that I have, the only thing that I know that works is to find a state of flow. When you are one with the creative process and you're not thinking about it, and that's, it's easier said than done, but, practice is the dumb, simple answer, but practice is what lets you get over the friction points that take you out of the state of flow, because when you have to stop and think about what you're doing, then you're doing that instead of doing the thing, and you're not. This gets back to the topic of my thought, the authentic presence. You are never more authentically present than when you are fully engaged in the act of the creative expression, whatever your medium is. And if you can just stay there, then it's going to sound right, it's going to look right, it's going to be right, because that's what it is. Yeah.
And we're out of time. I have to say that this this has been a record of questions at Liminal, I think, since 2018, which gives me hope about alternative spaces of learning. Like, I couldn't really understand a significant percentage, but I was still excited and enthusiastic about what was going on here, because there was a lot of human alchemy happening that was mind-blowing. At the same time, Amos, as imparter of knowledge and injector of enthusiasm, is like, for me, like, now a role model for how this should be done in alternative learning spaces. But it also clearly came from this collective vibe. So thank you all. Thank you so much.